Alright, I've cleaned the flywheel up. Not perfect, but good enough. I'm going to get it reinstalled. I cleaned the little bit. Like I said, I'm not trying to get it perfect, because if it runs, we'll give it a little more TLC, but I don't even know if it's going to run. Alright, got the flywheel reinstalled, and I want to get the cover reinstalled and get the recoil back on it so I can see what kind of compression we're working with. Alright everybody, hopefully you can hear me. I cleaned up the flywheel, got it mounted back on, put the blower housing back on. The spring was broken, the recoil, and there was not one available at the parts shop without ordering it. So I was able to temporarily bend the end of the spring, put a loop in it, and got that back going. Put our compression tester on, and we've got almost 50 pounds of compression. And I know those rings have to be probably pretty rusty, so maybe they'll come back. I'm going to work that around a little bit, put a little more WD-40 in there, keep pulling it, but we have signs of life. Alright, while the oil is setting in the piston, I came over here and sprayed some WD-40, and I've loosened up the throttle plate and the choke plate. There's a little bit of rust on that, but it's not going to flake off. So I'm going to turn my attention to the insides of the bowl. Let's see what kind of treasures await us. Okay, I cracked it open. We've got some rust, but not too bad. And this is not too bad, assuming I can get that pin out. And of course the jet's plugged up. But overall, I think I'll get the pilot jet out. That's the pilot jet right there. And then your main jet is right there, and I'm probably there. Get it to focus. Get it to focus. I'm sure they're both plugged up, so. And the pickup tube is plugged up as well. So we'll shoot some WD-40 and all that, see if we can get it loosened up, and maybe it'll come back. We'll see. Alright, took some work, but I was able to get the pilot jet out, the emulsion tube, the high-speed jet. The part that was stuck was the needle and seat. It was stuck in there, and it's aluminum or some kind of alloy, and it broke off. I was able to put a screw in there and pry it out. Now, one thing these Mikuni carburetors will do is the little tabs here that hold your float bowl pin will break, but I was able to get that pin out and get the float out without any problem. So yeah, this is part of those two are part of the needle and seat. And here's the clip. So I need one of those so far. I was able to get the pilot jet out. It's plugged up. The emulsion tube had a bunch of junk around it. The high-speed jet is plugged. So we'll run some wires through that. I don't have an ultrasonic cleaner, but I'm going to hit it with some carburetor cleaner. Clean all that out in there with a Q-tip, some carb spray. Clean out in there with the pilot jet goes. Clean it up. It's a Mikuni carburetor, as I said. And hopefully, without putting any money in this thing, we'll be able to get it put back together and at least test it and go from there. Okay, I reinstalled the carburetor stud, and after letting it soak, 3 pulls, we get up to 60 pounds of compression. So with compression release, that's about right. So I continue to add oil to it. It's not the oil that's bringing the compression up. I flushed it out, but yeah, 3 pulls, we're up to that. We were locked up. So okay, I ran into a little bit of a hiccup. They don't make the needle and seat for this carburetor anymore, and it was froze up in there from all the gunk, and I had to take a a screw and pull it out. However, after leaving the lawnmower shop, coming back, I have a box of carburetors. We had a donor carburetor. It's a Mikuni carburetor, and the needle and seat came right out. It looks the same all the way around. We're going to use the jets that came out of we're going to use the original carburetor. And the way to test it and see if the needle and seat is working is if you blow into the way to test it is to blow air into this inlet with it up like this. And if you do that, you should hear no air coming out. When you flip it over and blow into it, you can hear air coming out. It's opening and closing. So you can use a piece of fuel line, clean fuel line, to do that. Make sure it's real clean. You don't want to get any nastiness, but yeah, that's the way you test it. So let me get it put back together, put the jets back in it, and we'll move on to getting this thing started. I have all the jets back together. Let's test the float. All right, I took that piece of fuel line and I tested it. Just like I said, I hooked it to it. I blew air through it like this, and you could hear the air coming out. I flipped it up like this, and you could not get air to go through there. So float seems to be working, which is a miracle. I don't know about the internal passages in this carburetor. It may not work, but I've cleaned it out. We're going to try it. Okay, I've got the linkage carburetor installed. I've got the governor linkage and the governor spring, or the throttle spring, tension spring. So it's back in place, and if you'll remember the earlier video, this was froze up. So if we'd have started it, it probably would have been wide open and it probably would have run away with you. So let's get the choke plate back on and finish putting it together. Box, the air box, the choke assembly is back on now. I'm leaving the choke open because the choke is a little sticky. It'll close, but it doesn't want to open back up. So I'm going to open it up manually and leave it that way and use some carb spray to help it get started for the first time. And if it runs, I'll come back and rework this until it operates correctly. Okay, I reinstalled the governor plate as well as the choke plate. And now the governor arm and spring moves free. I did lay the spark plug down on top and it did have spark. I've got to reinstall the control bracket here that has the low oil shutoff on it, and we'll be ready to take this thing outside. I've taken and installed a temporary fuel line. We'll fill up the bowl and this tube, and again, I'm not going to use the choke just yet. I'm going to spray a little carb cleaner in there to get it going, see if it'll run off that carburetor, if it even runs at all. We will see. It's come a long way, don't you agree? All right, we'll keep pressing forward. All right, what are your thoughts? I've got a light bulb plugged in. Everything's back together. I've bottle fed it down the fuel line. I'm going to get the carb spray. I don't have my holder for my phone, so I will pull the phone back up immediately after it cranks, or if it doesn't crank. All right, I've got my portable tank hooked up. Let's see if it'll crank. As much as I wanted to keep it original, and all that work I did on the original carburetor, still the float stuck and it was pouring gas out of the top of the carburetor. So what I'm going to do now is, I had another Mikuni, looked like it was jetted the same size. I've got it installed. I'm going to turn the remote tank on and let's see how it does. I dare not put this air filter back in there. A little bit of restriction from the air filter would probably take care of that little bit of surging, and I also haven't checked to see how much gas is left in my temporary tank. However, I did not clean thoroughly through that carburetor, It's running it, and it may clear up on its own. The main thing is, my friends, it is alive again. Generator impossible. Lives again. You didn't think I'd do it, did you? Well, guess what? Neither did I. But it's alive. Alright everybody, this is the end of the video. I want to give you a little bit of an update, kind of close out the video. This belonged to a dear friend and fellow church deacon, and he died several years ago. This was in the back of his property. When Hurricane Irma came after his passing, this sat underwater, and chances of it being brought back were slim. But because of my friend Brother John Kitchens refused to throw anything away, I did this in honor of him and brought it back to life. It runs under its own power. Parts for the engine are obsolete. They don't make parts for it anymore. Carburetor, they didn't make the needle and seat anymore. They had a hard time. They had to order the spring for the Recoil, but I was able to make that one work. So right now I have a total of $0 in bringing it back, but you saw where it started. Here's where we're ending. Generator impossible. Done. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Goodbye.